game on the line. Williams lofting one for a doozy. He caught
it! You're listening to the world's #1 football podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Ben Hansen, Matt Hartman, and Ryan Matthews.
All right, how we doing, folks? It is just me again today. For those who are in the loop and kind of watch for the NFL stuff as well, you guys saw that Matt is back, which is really, really good. He's still kind of working his way back into doing the shows just because he's still just a little bit sick, but he did do the Sunday recap episode for football. So hopefully we will have him back for our live stream tomorrow night. So he is back, which is really, really good. But we do have a lot of college football to get into. We had to postpone the show, or I chose the executive decision to postpone the show just a little bit because our rankings came out a little bit late today. For some reason, it was 8:30 to 9 today. They decided to switch it up, throw a little curveball on us. That might have a lot to do with a lot of shuffling, even within the playoff committee. There was like a head chair. The Baylor head chair had took over, but then he had to step down from a week from holding the position because of family matters. So he stepped down. Now Arkansas's AD is in as the chair for this committee. It's really weird. It's a conversation for another day, especially in terms of who's running it and maybe some SEC bias, maybe not, who knows. And frankly, who cares? We got a lot of news to get into. First one, they kind of play off of each other a bit. Virginia has found their head coach. They were the first one to make a move in terms of hiring their head coach in what we anticipate to be a crazy head coach carousel here. And who else? They hired James Franklin. Not quite the level of program I think anyone anticipated James Franklin going to. I think people expected a program that was a little bit more powerful, let's say, have a little bit more push behind it. Virginia Tech is not that program, but I think he's a perfect fit for Virginia Tech because, again, he's been able to rebuild programs. And who else better to do that than James Franklin? And that kind of spins perfectly into another little bit of piece of news that we have received. It's kind of unofficially official that Mike Norvell is going to be out as the head coach for Florida State, but they're doing it at the end of the year. I think James Franklin would have been a perfect fit for Florida State, but I guess they have kind of told Mark Norvell that, like, you're out, we're going to fire you, but they had promised him the end of the season, which doesn't make any sense because if they fired him now versus the end of the season, it really wouldn't have changed anything within the buyout. And that kind of seems like the whole thing that has been holding up this firing for them is because his buyout is massive. And again, James Franklin would have been a perfect fit, but now one of these premier coaches is already off the market with a lot of jobs that we expect to be opening up here. In terms of college or other coaching carousel news, Ole Miss really, really, really wants Lane Kiffin to give them a little bit of an answer towards what to expect, whether or not he's leaning towards staying in Ole Miss, whether or not he's leaning in terms of voting to take offers. There's a lot kind of in the air right now in terms of what he's doing. A lot of that speculation coming from his family being in Gainesville, Florida, on Sunday, and then swinging on over to Baton Rouge, Louisiana on Monday, which has caused a lot of, as you'd expect, turmoil, because those are probably the two biggest jobs outside of Penn State that have opened up. And Ole Miss is saying, well, hey, we understand maybe you want to go somewhere, but can you at least let us know what to expect? Are you going to take offers? Are you looking to leave? Are you looking to stay? Are you using this as leverage? No one really knows. Ole Miss doesn't know. And to be frank, I'd be shocked if Lane Kiffin even knows what he's going to do at this point. Again, there's a likely chance that Ole Miss finds themselves in the playoffs this year, which, postpones things and puts even the coaching carousel on even a bigger hold, because these big programs are going to want to wait and see if they can get Lane Kiffin in the building. So just a lot of craziness, let's say, going on in that side of the SEC. And then kind of the last bit of news, and this kind of even ties within the coaching carousel in its own right. Sam Leavitt, he is not expected to return to ASU for the rest of the season, and even for next year for that matter. His team has kind of looked to see what's out there in terms of the transfer portal. Is there greener pastures for him to go to? Maybe Miami? I don't know. There's is probably going to be a lot of quarterback jobs opening with a lot of this quarterback or coaching carousel going on. But why would he be leaving? Does this say something about Kenny Dillingham? He's obviously an alum from ASU. He's done a really, really good job in terms of turning this program around. And I'd imagine that there are a lot of bigger schools trying to throw around their money to get him. He has been very outspoken in terms of wanting to stay at ASU. Maybe he will, but this news of Sam Leavitt kind of transferring or wanting to transfer, at least look at options, might be foreshadowing maybe a move for Kenny Dillingham. But only time will tell. We'll see. Again, I expect a lot of job openings, people hiring away. Well, some are all maybe going to Auburn, and who takes the Tulane job, and so on and so forth. Again, so much as we've talked about through the last 5, 6, 7 weeks in terms of college football here. It's going to be one of the craziest off seasons to watch in a very long time. I can at least confidently say that. But we will get into what has postponed the show or pushed back the show a little bit. The college football rankings. They came out. We see a little bit of the shakeup here after that top 3, with Georgia then taking the 4th spot after Alabama losing to Oklahoma. We see them drop all the way back at 10, which would still have them in the college football playoffs, which makes that Iron Bowl game very, very fascinating, because if Auburn wins that game, well, Alabama might find themselves on the way out. But that's not really the only, or that's one of the pieces in here. Again, the other piece there is Georgia finding themselves all the way up at 4, jumping a couple teams in the process there, or I guess not, they were 5, jump up to 4, because they they gave it to Arch. It was not a fun game to be a Texas fan. It's at this point that I really do wish that Matt was here, because I know Matt was very opinionated on this game in particular. You were kind of hoping that the defense was able to keep Gunnar Stockton and this Georgia offense in check a little bit more than what they were able to do. The final score of that game was 35-10. Obviously, the Bulldogs. Arch didn't look particularly bad. His stat line wasn't awful. 251 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, which is fine, but it kind of goes back to what everyone has been saying throughout the process here. You expected Arch to be much better. But as I said, going into this year, I kind of had always felt like this is going to be a little bit of a growing pain year for Texas. There were a lot of pieces that were missing. Their entire new offensive line, basically, pass catchers leaving to the NFL, a basically new quarterback. Obviously, Arch has been in the system, but hasn't had a whole lot of playing time. And that's exactly what this year is. And I think it's really easy to look at the Texas Longhorns and be like, they went, let's say, 8-3 and played in a bowl game, obviously. And it's easy to look at that based off of what their preseason expectations were and say, well, this was a bad season. But again, it was a growing year for them. And while Arch didn't have an amazing game, we've seen him over the course of the year steadily improve. And that's really what you wanted to see as a Texas fan, especially with the way that the season had started for them. But on the flip side of that, man, we've talked so much about Gunnar Stockton having this chaotic play, and what Gunnar Stockton are you going to get? Are you going to get the crazy Gunnar Stockton, or are you going to get the under control Gunnar Stockton? And as the season goes on, he continues to settle down into his own role, even more than what Arch has. He was super efficient in this game, 24 of 29, 229 passing yards, which isn't crazy, but 4 touchdowns and an interception. And they were really able to just get the job done. They weren't super affected by this Texas defense, as you can see by the score. And if Gunnar Stockton continues to play this kind of football where he's just under control, getting the ball where it needs to go, being on time, being on target, it is going to make this Georgia offense kind of a lot to handle, because you're not asking him to be this like crazy playmaker. You're just asking him to get the ball where he needs to go. In the last couple of weeks, he's really been able to do that, which is super, super interesting, and why you're able to see them put up 35 points against the defense like Texas has. So it's just going to be interesting as the season goes on, especially with these top 3 or 4 teams in the ACC, with Texas A&M, Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Those 4 teams at this point are a virtual lock, maybe outside of Alabama, as I've said. But again, we'll see how the Iron Bowl goes. You kind of have to hold your breath always there. But moving on to that other SEC team that I had mentioned, Texas A&M. That was a crazy, crazy, crazy comeback. They were very, very close to being upset against South Carolina, especially coming out of that first half. Texas A&M ends up winning the game against South Carolina 31-30, where they pitched a shutout in the second half, didn't allow South Carolina to score. Going into half, the score of that game was 30-3 South Carolina. Marcel Reeds struggled immensely in that first half, throwing 2 interceptions as the half was ending, which ended up leading to 10 points to South Carolina. But they just came out the second half, played very, very disciplined football along the defensive line and the defense in total. And Marcel Reed was able to turn it on and really get the balls to the playmakers that he needed to. This has that very interesting context behind it, especially when you consider SEC versus the Big Ten. People, obviously, I'm going to be biased in my own right, going to IU. But people had come out of that IU game against Penn State, and they were like, this was an ugly win. How could IU be close in this game? They should have smeared the floor with Penn State. But then you turn around, and here's Texas A&M having a bigger comeback, down 27 points at a certain point, and everyone's praising them. Everyone's saying, look at Texas A&M. Look how amazing this was. Maybe this was Marcel Reed's Heisman moment. It doesn't make quite much sense to me. I've kind of always been in the boat that it's been a every given Sunday situation. I said it with IU. You never know what you're playing, especially in these bigger conferences with South Carolina or with the SEC and with the Big Ten. And everyone you get is going to be a good win, especially when when it's happening within conference play. So good job. Oklahoma, I kind of mentioned it early at the top of this little section here, gets a big win against Alabama, which bumps them in front of Alabama, as you guys see here, going all the way up to 8. And this firmly puts them in playoff contention. The job is not finished. Their spot is not locked up. I think there are only 4 teams in the country that probably have a locked up spot at this point. But if Oklahoma can finish the job the rest of the season, then they are absolutely going to make the playoffs, which is fantastic for them. We've kind of been waiting for them to get that big SEC win, and they were finally able to get it done against what was at the time a 4th-ranked Alabama. So congratulations there. And the offense felt under control. Every week that we become removed or farther removed from the injury for John Mateer, the more under control he looks. Shocking revelation, am I right? But he continues to look good, and again, was able to get the job done against Alabama. The next big thing here is the midshipmen. Go Navy. We are always a pro Navy podcast here. They end up beating University of Southern Florida, which was at this time last week, your group of 5 bid. Now it is JMU. Congratulations, JMU. We always had the worry within the American Conference that they were just going to cannibalize well, it's not JMU. I lied. I apologize. It is Tulane. But we always had the concern within the American Conference that these teams were just going to cannibalize each other in USF, in Memphis, in Navy. And that's kind of what we've seen here. These 3 teams have just been beating up on each other, while Tulane kind of gets to just swerve all of those teams outside of Memphis, who they've beaten. And now they're firmly the team, and it's their job to lose. Again, there's still a little bit of a chance that pesky JMU team is lurking in the shadows and just waiting for Tulane to get a loss, maybe in the American Championship game. And if JMU is able to get the job finished and Tulane ends up losing in the American, well, then it's JMU. So right now, it kind of seems like it's just a 2-horse race at this point within the group of 5 team. Again, it continues to be, well, does a group of 5 team even deserve it? We've seen Tulane play a top-tier playoff caliber team in Ole Miss already in this season and get absolutely stomped. It's their only loss, but they got absolutely stomped. It was not even a game. So again, it just continues to push that narrative. Does a group of 5 team deserve a playoff spot? Lord knows. And then finally, just kind of the last bit of news in terms of what had happened the last week that might have a little bit of playoff implications. I don't think it's anything necessarily to worry about for this coming week, but it might be something to look for kind of in the future as the season goes on, especially next week. But Jeremiah Smith and Cardell Tate both had left their games last week with an injury. They're being really weird about it. Not super shocked by that. We don't really know what's going on. When asked about the injuries to both of their top 2 wide receivers, Ryan Day was pretty cryptic about it, saying, well, they're working with the trainers every day and we'll see. And that was kind of the response that we've gotten. If I had to guess and speculate, they will probably sit out against this game, or sit out this week against Rutgers. Even without those top 2 guys, OSU is still the better team, still a more talented team, and they should still handle Rutgers in easy fashion, might I add. You don't want to throw those guys out there, risk them, aggravating that injury and making it worse, because obviously next week is that really, really big week in college football with all your rivals play, and everything goes out the window when OSU plays Michigan. So you are really hoping and praying that those guys are healthy come next week when they have to go to Ann Arbor and play against this team. So again, if I were to speculate, both of those guys probably will not play next week or this week. I think it's, again, the smart decision. You want to have them as healthy as possible when playing against the Michigan Wolverines. But that is kind of everything that had happened. We'll take one final look here in terms of what we see within the rankings. I had mentioned it again. I think there's a couple teams that are worth mentioning here at this point. Texas finds themselves at 17. As I said last week, that was probably their final chance to make it in. Once they lost that game, you kind of find yourself out of contention at this point. Miami right now is the most likely team out of the ACC to get in. They're there at 13. I still continue to be perplexed why they're behind Notre Dame. They have the same amount of losses, but better wins, even wins against Notre Dame. So I'm not fully sure why Miami is not in front of Notre Dame, considering they have the head-to-head, same amount of losses and better wins. But it's just the way that the College Football Committee have these guys ranked. But other than that, I think that kind of wraps up this segment of the podcast for us, with just that leaves us with just one more kind of segment here that's looking towards what we're going to see this week. There's really 3 games that I think are worth mentioning here. None of them being an SEC game, because this week is kind of your cupcake week in terms of SEC, where they're playing a group of 5 teams like Mercer and all of that. So none of which are your SEC games. The first one, and I think the one with probably the most implications here, is 15th ranked USC versus 7th ranked Oregon. We're going to go ahead and remove that. Versus 7th ranked Oregon. Oregon, as you guys can see, is kind of the heavy favorite in this game, favored by 9.5 points. But you never know. Oregon kind of has a little bit of a history of maybe losing these games, especially this season. And I'm just really, really interested to see if there's enough along this defense for Oregon to keep this offense in check. Because it only takes 1, 2, 3 big plays from this USC offense to really make this an interesting game here. USC, as we've said all season long, really has the offense for it in Maiyava and Lane, in Malachi Lemon, to really make these defense suffer in terms of these big play threats. Give me 1 second here, guys. I apologize. So USC really has a chance to make this an interesting finish down the stretch for the Big Ten. I'd imagine if USC wins this game, they would end up jumping Oregon. I don't think they would find themselves all the way up at 7 at that point, but jumping Oregon and kind of maybe giving themselves a last-second hope to maybe make a playoff push. At that point, if they beat Oregon, I think Oregon will firmly be out of playoff contention. You never know, but I think their loss to USC will probably drop them out of those top 11 spots. Again, a reminder, you want to be within the top 11 because that 12th spot will go to your group of 5 team, which again is what is ranked Tulane team. They found themselves all the way at 22 or 23. which is different from last week when we didn't see a single group of 5 team rank. So congratulations, Tulane again. Now moving on to the ACC game here. That's Pitt versus Georgia Tech. Pitt has a chance to play a little bit of a spoiler here with Georgia Tech. Right now, Georgia Tech is on the outside looking in. Their only hopes at this point is a couple of teams get ACC losses, and for them to play in the ACC championship game for a fight to hold the conference winner and hopefully that auto bid into the playoffs for them. But Pitt has a chance to really, really make this game interesting. Pitt is no longer ranked. They were 22 going into this week. Ended up getting, I don't want to say smoked, but, pretty well handled by Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love just popped off, continues to show why he is one of the best running backs in the country, probably the best running back in the country, but I'd be remiss to not throw Matt Hardy in there, especially after that 300-yard game in his own right. But again, Pitt, they're no longer ranked. They don't have any chances at this point of making it into the playoffs, but they have a chance to be the nail in the coffin for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, as you guys can see, is favored 2.5. Georgia Tech is kind of used to being in these positions. We saw that play a very close game this past week. They end up winning. But again, this is kind of the team that is just going to knock you down. They want to pull you through the mud. They want to keep it close. And they've, for the most part, done a pretty good job of doing that and finishing in these tight games. I'd imagine, as the spread suggests, that this is going to be another one of those tight games for Georgia Tech. And then finally, we got a chance to see another team play a little bit of a spoiler here. It's a Big 12 matchup. It's BYU at the University of Cincinnati. Cincinnati, at one point, we had discussed maybe being a playoff team. The cards did not fall the right way. Sorsby ended up having a couple rough games, which had led them to now being unranked. But now they have a chance to beat a BYU team. It's, again, not going to do anything in terms of getting themselves into the playoffs, but it will do a little bit of knocking them out. And I think BYU has to win this game if they have any hopes of making it into the playoffs here, because if they lose this game, I would imagine unless something crazy happens with Georgia Tech or Utah that bumps them down to, at the bare minimum, the third team in the Big 12, and outside of this 11 teams, as I'd mentioned. Right now, they're right there on the borderline. They're that last team that is in. So we'll see. Just keep an eye out for it. There's a lot of chances for teams to play spoilers this week and prevent some teams from getting in the playoffs. It's a lot of fun. Again, next week is going to really be the big week, the show that everyone wants to watch, because that is going to be your big show where you see all of these rivalry games. Most notably, obviously, Michigan, go blue, versus OSU, the Iron Bowl, teams to, again, play a little bit of spoiler, maybe a last chance to make their own name here. It'll be a lot of fun. I would imagine next week we will see Matt. We can cross our fingers. And again, hopefully you guys will see Matt tomorrow. We can, again, only hope, but he's doing much, much better, which is really, really good. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, a whole lot of support recently, especially over on the YouTube, but continue to, engage with the posts, like, comment, repost, do all of that jazz. We really appreciate all the support that you guys have been showing us, especially over the last couple of weeks. And again, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Regional Radio Sports, Spotify for podcasters, and Uppercuts Grooming. And as far as the schedule goes, again, Sunday night we'll be recording our recap show for the NFL that comes out Monday morning. Every Tuesday for the foreseeable future for college football, we'll be doing this show Tuesday night around 9 o'clock, as long as the playoff committee allows it. And then Wednesday, we will do our NFL preview show at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, where, again, you guys will see all of us, me, Matt, Ryan. It's always a great time. Make sure you guys swing by. Much love. Thank you, guys, and we will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully.